afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. Are we good? Kara, can you hear me? Okay. Good afternoon. I hate to break up the conversations. There were some good ones. Good afternoon. Welcome to this legislative kickoff. I'm Mike Sfrega. I'm joined by my colleagues here to the left. I'll introduce them in a moment. Let me tell you what it is we're going to do. I'm going to have some good news, so that we're going to start off with some good news. I think we could all use that. Thank you for laughing. It is really good news. Second thing is we'll go through our appropriations request of the state legislature. It'll be UA with, of course, a focus on UAF. But we want to make this engaging. So this will be a bit of a presentation, some discussion, and I want to take some questions afterwards. I have an iPad here. I think I know how to work, and I'll take some questions coming in from online. There's a URL as well, but you can do live questions at the end. There's a reason we're lined up like this and a reason for this panel discussion. So to my left is Lisa Putman. Lisa is the board chair of the Greater Fairbanks Chamber of Commerce, and she also serves on the Chancellor's Board of Advisors. I've asked Lisa to come because I think it's very important that we as Fairbanks advocate together, that this is about our community. In Fairbanks, UAF is an essential part of the community, and we are an essential part of the interior. This should be like muskox together in Juneau, and we should be co-advocating for everything that we need as a broader community than just UAF and just Fairbanks, because I don't know, Lisa, how you separate the two, and we should never separate the two. And I don't know that we've ever done it this way, this early, this purposefully. If we have, good for us. If we haven't, shame on us. But I think going forward, this is what it will be like from now until the session is over, and I'm hoping that this now is a long-term tradition where one voice in Juneau for the broader community, for the benefit of all. Anything that helps our community helps us. Anything that helps us helps our community. So Lisa, thank you for coming on behalf of the Chamber. Everyone knows Chad Hutchison. Chad is our state director of state relations for the University of Alaska. Chad has been here before. We're going to continue to call on Chad. He gives us great insight. Sometimes we don't like what he says. It's not because it's Chad, it's because of just reality. But he gives us a really good dose of reality, but also he gives us paths to follow to try to maneuver this really difficult state budget landscape. So Chad, thank you for being here. Everyone knows Jackson, our student leader, the president of ASUAF. Jackson, we rely on Jackson for great insights. I think it's really important to hear what students think about our institution, how they advocate for us, what they want us to advocate for them, and what their perceptions are on our budget, on our priorities. And they really have influenced our priorities. They have in the past. They certainly have this time through. So we're going to look to Jackson to talk a little bit about that and anything else he wants to talk about, which is always dangerous when you open that door up, but we're here to take it, Jackson. You can speak with us. And everyone knows Teresa Bacher. Teresa, long-time Fairbanks, but Teresa, as you see on the screen, Director of Development and Alumni Relations, really important philanthropically. But boy, what a critical network, not just supporting our institution, but it really is the face of our institution, our alumni, the power that our alumni have. And they, too, have a loud voice in shaping the institution, but also our budget requests as well. So she wears two hats. It's more like a sombrero, but it's really important that Teresa be here to give us her perspectives. I want to start off by giving you some good news, not done yet, but we're hoping to have it done soon. Some of you already know this, so this is going to be old, but whenever there's good news, I don't care. I want to say it over and over, even if it's old news. You know the battle we have had in Washington, D.C. with this federal landscape. Everybody has had a challenge. It's been a really difficult year, and it's not over yet. But our delegation has worked tirelessly on UAF's behalf, UA's behalf, the state's behalf, and the broader federal approach to appropriations that impact us some ways. They have dual roles. They're for the nation, they're for us. We have a House of Representatives bill that has passed the House, waiting for Senate to take it on, and if they pass it, the president has said he would sign it. What does that mean for us? It means a number of things. So I have to take off my glasses and now read. So there are a number of appropriations that have moved forward with the House. NSF, NASA, NOAA, DOE, USGS, a lot of the very critical agencies to this institution, to our $250 million research enterprise here. What has passed is basically a flat budget for all of those agencies, some down 1 or 2 or 3%, some up 1 or 2%. That's a victory for us because we were looking at 30, 40, 50% cuts to a lot of the agencies that we rely on. And I think we have given them one hell of a return on their investment, but we needed for that to continue. So I want to thank our delegation. I want to thank both sides of the aisle in the House. The Senate has nodded their head on their approval of that kind of a bill. Again, not done yet, but it's really critical. But I think that will pass. I think that's great news for us because we're navigating two landscapes. One is the federal landscape with all of its potholes, and one is the state landscape. On the federal side, this is great news. Again, not done yet, but we think it will be. What's doubly important here is this idea of indirect cost recovery, the ICR. At one point, the administration had recommended that it be lowered to 15% across the board, maybe even less. Our delegation, others, all of us, we together advocated to keep it exactly where it is. And in those bills, it keeps the ICR exactly where it is. That's a huge relief for us. That ripples across the entire institution because, as you know, perhaps better than I, how that indirect cost recovery feeds the research endeavor, feeds our federal endeavors, but also how that money ripples through the campus and then through the community and through the state. So that's really good news. Again, caveat, not done yet. Anything can happen. I think that's been proven out. But all indications are that this bill and others will go through the Senate, be passed, go to the president to be passed. I think that's great news for us because one big boulder might be removed from the landscape we still need to navigate. So that's a good thing. I know we're going to get some different news on our state appropriations narrative. Like the federal side, we don't give up. We keep pushing for what we believe to be a great value proposition, and we have to deal with the reality. But on the federal side, I think we're in as good a shape as you can be in across the board, not just UAF, but UA system and across the country as well. So that's the federal landscape, which is great. Today, we want to focus our time on the state landscape. This will be, many of you were here for Julie Queen's presentation. Some of this will be a repeat. We're not going to go into numbers. We're not going to do spreadsheets, but I want to give you an idea of the big buckets of requests and why we've made those requests. This will be interactive. At the end of that, I will hand it over to Lisa. She'll present to us the chamber's priorities, and it won't take a genius to crosswalk how important it is for us to support the chamber and how the chamber is to support us and how every one of these requests somehow are connected. And it wasn't even planned. Next year, we'll plan it that way. Okay, this URL is really important, this QR code, so make sure that if you have questions, go there, and I will watch on the iPad at the end. Okay, big picture. And Chad, I'm going to ask you to come back around after Lisa speaks and maybe come back to this chart as well. This is the big request that the Board of Regents have approved and forwarded on to the state of Alaska, almost $480 million request. The governor's budget has come in at $358 million. There's the delta of over $120 million. That's the difference between what we need as an institution to maintain and grow strategically and what the governor has proposed. That's the hard work ahead. And the hard work is going to be spearheaded by the president, by the Board of Regents, and by Chad in that chair. But Chad will be with you as you sit there. You will not be alone. But that's what we're dealing with. About $120 million of need, request that we have to work on. And it's going to be tough because that's $120 million from the state's university. You know full well there's a lot of needs in our state and a shrinking budget. So is one institution better than the other? We're not going to play that game. Simply the value proposition of this institution, I believe, the value proposition speaks for itself. You invest in us, you invest in our state, we help the state advance. Of course, there's going to be compromise, but we should all know what that $120 million difference is, and why there is that difference, and what we're asking Chad and other leaders in our state, including the 3 chancellors, to not just navigate, but to advocate on behalf of. Within the system proposal is the UAF proposal. A lot of these things, this is not a sexy proposal that has gone into the board. The board has approved this. There's nothing here tectonic, yet it's all important. Okay, some very basic stuff. About $15 million, Chad, when I go from fact to fiction, reel me in. But when it's our compensation, we ask for about $15 million. UAF is $7 million of that. So that's a big piece that we're advocating for. That's compensation for all of our staff. And that's a really important thing for all of us. The governor has suggested that there'd be, is it 7 million? 6.5 million he's put into the budget for compensation only for union negotiated raises. Okay, we still have a delta of over $8 million collectively to get to. So that's $7 million that UAF is asking for on behalf of just UAF. That's what we will be advocating for. There's a reason that's the #1 box there. We have to get that from the state. And then other things that are just basic that you all know, operating costs, all of which are going up. Everything's going up with a declining budget. Jackson, regents, we all know Fernando, our student regent, all have said to us that student mental health is not just important, we need more assets to help our students. The town is strapped for professionals. We're strapped to be able to take care of our students in this area. This is a line item into the budget that says UAF, and by the way, UAA and UAS too. But we need that money to just give us a little bit more capacity, another person, some more counselors, something that can help our students navigate very difficult times. This is not a lot to ask for our students. We need that. As you know, recruitment, retention, graduation, priority for the Board of Regents, but that's why we're here. And we're asking for a very modest $2 million increase to that effort. I think the modest amount of money we have invested in enrollment has proven out to be well worth the investment, well worth the investment. Deferred maintenance, yeah, forever. It's deferred maintenance. It's just the way it is. That $36 million or so, I would argue, is a modest amount of money because the demand is so big. Things break, especially, as you all know, at 30, 40, 50 below zero, and our buildings are just older because we are the flagship. We are the cornerstone of this institution. That we continue to work on. It's hard. It's a hard sell, but nevertheless, we continue to work on that. Really quickly, you see the other boxes there, capital projects. These are very modest capital projects. This is about removing old buildings, doing that kind of work. Again, not sexy, but absolutely need this done because we're pouring money into deferred maintenance and capital projects that could be used for other things. If we can move the deferred maintenance world off of our list, we'd have more money to invest in the things that we really all want and need to invest into. The 4 boxes left, R1 strategy, ag and food systems, drone programs, critical minerals. We believe, as does the Board of Regents and the state, that those are all important to us. The state has invested in these. We have the capacity. The state wants it. We want these areas of expertise to be shined upon, invested in, and we believe that there is interest from the state. There's certainly a priority from the board for those 4 areas. And there are handouts with details for each of those boxes available to you all. So some basic needs, the first 3, 5, 6 boxes, and then the other 4 are things that we need money for to advance as an institution. Okay, I'm going to leave it there, and let's see. Jump to Lisa's and the Chamber's priorities, and then you'll see where the crosswalk is between the two. Lisa?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And first, I have to say hi to my mom. She's in the crowd. So, hi. Pleasure to be here. I think this is the first time the Chamber has been invited to participate in this.
Your mom suggested it, so I
okay. But what I love is that the slide beforehand, if you were to put these two on top of one another, there are so many overlapping priorities here. And probably the most important one for you all is our promotion of UAF as Alaska's flagship university. I don't think it's a secret to anybody that the business community is completely engaged in what is happening up here at the university, because it impacts every single business industry in Fairbanks. So the things that you guys have happening on the Hill that are related to the university, the business community is seeing those exact same things play out in their own businesses. So what happens up here is extremely important. I'm not going to actually go through every single one of these, except for I want to highlight that there are a few that are really closely tied to the struggles, I think, and challenges and opportunities that you have up here on campus, and that would be housing. Housing is such a critical piece to our military, to attracting doctors and teachers and professionals that wanted to come here, keeping our students here that want to be able to stay after careers, education, the quality of life, infrastructure. I mean, we live in a town that was boom or bust during the oil time, and we have some aging infrastructure ourselves, as you do on campus, so that deferred maintenance is something that every business faces as well in their own industries, and just being able to attract employees just as much as you all want to attract students to come here. If we don't have a quality of life off the Hill, and folks say, well, why do I want to go to Fairbanks, Alaska, where you just experienced the coldest winter in the last 70 years? Why would I want to come here? Those are things that the Fairbanks Chamber is advocating for, and we have a great relationship with the university. We have a great relationship with the UA system. President Pat Pitney comes to a lot of the chamber events and functions, and so I think there's just a unique overlap between the chamber and what we stand for and what this university and what this campus has stood for a long time. So I think we want to get more to conversation, so I'm not going to steal the microphone for too long, because I know Chad's got some really important news to share.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa. And you're right. I mean, just look at all of those and think back to the slides that we just went through quickly in our buckets of priorities. Chad, I put up the box here. So give us a 101 here on where the state currently is in terms of a unfortunate budget deficit, what the legislators are going to have to address, what the governor has proposed, and what it is we're trying to navigate and advocate for.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So I look at it as there's three big buckets that we can think of that represent an update from when I spoke in November. Things have happened in December, particularly on December 11th. The budget was proposed by the governor, and that includes the operating budget, which is paying for state government services. That's Department of Correction, it's DNR, it's Department of Health, Department of Education. That also includes, it's the operating, it's the supplemental, and it's the capital budget. The supplemental budget is basically a budget that is proposed by the governor to cover expenses that occur beyond the legislative session. So emergencies, fire services, et cetera. I'll talk in a minute why that's very important to us this year, because there's an important focus that's going to be on the Higher Education Investment Fund that's actually in that supplemental budget. And then the capital budget was proposed too, and that's all the capital assets, all the buildings around the state of Alaska. Concurrent to the budget being proposed by the governor, we also have our revenue forecast that's presented in the fall and spring of every year. The fall revenue forecast just came out. That gives you a snapshot of what they think the prospective revenue is for the state of Alaska. A lot of it revolves around oil historically. That's diminished in years past, but it's still an important part of our state. And we'll talk a little bit about the ramifications that they see coming down the pipe when it comes to oil prices and how that's going to affect our ability to advocate and how many dollars are going to be available when it comes to the state budget generally. And then the third thing I want to talk about is that has occurred since we last spoke in November is some issues that have outstanding questions that will probably have an effect on the state treasury. Some of it is international, and some of it is right here in our own state, and it occurred in late December, early January, and it's something that we should all be cognizant of going forward. So going back to the budget, proposed budget. The operating budget proposed by the governor is about $12.1 billion. That covers all of the employment costs all around the state for the agencies I mentioned. Some of those are significant costs. Department of Health always has a high dollar value Department of Corrections. The universities also in the top 3 or 4, depending on what year it is, when it comes to making sure that that's funded. And one of the things that we should be aware of, and this is something that I kind of referenced back in November, is that one of the budget items in the operating budget is the permanent fund dividend. And right now, the governor's proposed budget, he is adhering to the statutory interpretation of the permanent fund dividend. And right now, that's at about $3,650. And if that were to go forward, you're looking at a $1.8 billion draw on one of our last savings accounts, which is called the Constitutional Budget Reserve. And the legislature has to have a 3/4 vote in order to get into that reserve to cover the amount proposed with the permanent fund dividend. So that's a tough hill to climb. The governor has done that multiple years out of his tenure, and the legislature will debate it. Oftentimes they've modified that amount in order to, particularly in the Senate is the one that has the final control before it sends it back to the House for the conference committee where they have the final negotiations. But they would prefer to have a balanced budget with no debt if they could. So that's what you're looking at as far as the operating budget. So right now, as it stands, before the debate starts on January 20th, which is when the session starts, you're looking at a $1.8 billion deficit in the governor's proposed budget. Important to us is also the supplemental budget. So the supplemental budget was drafted and given to the state for consideration. You'll see that there's a $40 million request for disaster services. That mostly is focused on the typhoon. And what I referenced before, which is very, very important, there's also $129.5 million as it relates to replenishing the higher education investment fund. And the reason why that's so important to the university is because that's where Alaska Performance Scholarships come from. We want those young people in Alaska coming to the university. It's all about workforce. It's all about assisting Lisa and her business partners to make sure that we have a qualified workforce seeking a post-secondary education. One of the quotes that frankly Lisa and I heard just a couple days ago from one of the representatives is this is a representative quote. He said that the legislature stole the money from the kids and they have to pay it back. And I think the governor recognizes that. And that's great that's occurring. And I think the legislature understands that that's very important to make sure those Alaska Performance Scholarships, that there's security in that program, and that those young people can look at that as a stable source so they can continue their post-secondary education. So that's very important. That's one of the things that we're advocating for down in Juneau, and it's something that's we should all give good consideration to. And the third thing is the capital budget. The capital budget's at about $2.1 billion. The vast majority of that capital budget is DOT funding. There's a 90%, 10% match. 90% is the federal government, 10% is the state. And the governor has put the minimum in. Historically, this governor has been pretty low on capital budget, and that's a consistency over the course of his tenure. So the university at this point in time has nothing in the capital budget, and that's something that we'll look to raise a voice on when our advocates come down to Juneau. And generally, a lot of the capital assets, there's negotiations that occur, and sometimes in the last 48 hours of session, to be quite frank. But that's something that's very important to the university, UAF in particular. So the other thing I mentioned that came out around December 11th was the revenue forecast. So that gives you an idea about what we can expect in the future. And there's a couple interesting things there. It was slated at about $6.4 billion is what they think the revenue is going to come in from all sources. About 1.8 of that is oil. Oil has not had the same sort of ramifications to the state budget as it used to. It used to cover a lot of our state budget. Now most of it comes out of the permanent fund earnings when they're doing adjustments on the permanent fund dividend. But one of the takeaways from the revenue forecast, the fall revenue forecast, was that they think that oil prices per barrel, Alaska North Slope crude, is going to be down about $2 to $5. And keep in mind, this was a couple weeks ago. It's going to be down about $2 to $5 per barrel. Right now, it's at about $63 per barrel. And the good news is they think production is going to be up. So actually, oil revenue is going to be up a little tiny bit, even though you have a diminished price point, at least a forecasted diminished price point. Production's up because of Willow and Pitka. So that's good news overall. And it's something that we should think about, at least in the forecast. That's going to set the segue for my third big action item to be cognizant of when you're thinking about the budget is some of these unknowns that have happened in the last couple of weeks and how it's going to affect both oil prices and Alaska moving forward. So one is Venezuela, and we got to see the ramifications when it comes to a competitive environment in Venezuela potentially. Right now, we're at, like I said, $63 a barrel. And long term, what is the effect going to be when it comes to exports out of Venezuela that are being refined in the United States potentially, and what is the effect going to be on a competitive market with the state of Alaska Treasury? And then another item that will have to be considered for the legislative session that came up, and again, this has been a year where weather has been a real challenge, but in Southeast Alaska, after the proposed budget, we had catastrophic storms that they had to declare, they had emergency declarations for Juneau, Haines, Skagway, Hoonah. Roofs were collapsing, boats were sinking in the harbor, and there's going to be a price tag associated with that. Any funds not covered by FEMA, generally the presumption is that the state picks up the tab. So that's just an awareness, and Mike instructed me to kind of give an update so we have a who, what, when, where, and why about what's happening with the state budget and understanding where the university fits in that context as we go down and raise our voice for advocacy.
Thanks, Chad. That's a lot. And we'll come back to all those pots. That's why this is complicated, because of all of the pots that you talked about and the dynamic of trying to fund APS and other things, but also the PFD and how it all fits in. And we understand that there are financial realities, political realities, and then just the global realities, not just Venezuela, but Iran and other places as well. Let me turn it over to Jackson. Jackson, I've asked you to do a number of things for us, please. One is unvarnished response to UAF's budget proposals. You can talk about the focus on our student mental health and our efforts there, but I want to give you the opportunity to talk about from your perspective, student leader, but the student body, what it is, what the needs are, the ways in which some of this can support our student body, what it is that you don't see in these budgets that you want to. And then, Teresa, I'm going to kind of ask you the same thing from your perspective, but then I want to come back and tie the four together on sort of approaches to advocacy and the effective ways to advocate versus the non-effective ways to advocate as well. Jackson.
Yeah, so I think when we talk about advocacy, and going down to Juneau and speaking on behalf of the university, I think after speaking with a lot of our student government and people around campus, there's really a sense of deep ownership, not just of our experience here at UAF, but also, of the state. A lot of us students are really passionate about our education here and the opportunities that have been afforded to us, whether that's through scholarships or other academic opportunities. And we're just very excited to present that to legislators and the importance and value of it. It was really interesting. On Tuesday, we had our first Senate meeting, and I was looking around the room, and I think you would find this of any senator, but a lot of our senators don't just join student government out of this want to, feed back into the university only. There's this great desire to bridge that gap between UAF and the community and the state, because like you've said, we've had such a close relationship, and that's something that we're really excited to share about. I think in terms of priorities for us in Juneau, a big one is mental health funding. And you'll find that UAF actually has one of the most adept mental health programs out of any university in Alaska, and yet we still do not have near the capacity that we need. Universities like UAA and UAS are much more behind us, and the funding that we had hoped to get from the government is really necessary. There's a growing need for these resources, and they've been extraordinarily helpful at UAF. Just speaking to so much of the student body, that is a big resource that is just so fundamental and helpful while you're completing your education in Fairbanks, and anywhere in the state. The other thing is the Alaska Performance Scholarship. If you look at any other part of the state budget, infrastructure is important, yes. Public safety is important. Healthcare is important. But when you look at education, it's the thing that creates the people who make everything else work. Investing in that is important, and investing in youth is powerful. And that's, I think, a really critical thing that we want to communicate, that things like the Alaska Performance Scholarship keep youth in state. They, keep our talent in state. I think a good example is my former roommate, Braden Benke was his name, but he got accepted into Harvard, probably one of the smartest people I have met in my life. And he ended up coming to UAF, and he came for two reasons, he said. He said, I got great scholarship funding. I was able to afford an education. And two, he was from Nome, and he had kind of a rural background, and the opportunities and the holistic support that we offer at this university was crucial to his educational success. And so stories like that are incredible, because now he's an engineer working in the state, contributing to our economy, and helping improve our workforce. So stories like that are really the ones that we want to share, that we want to kind of hit home. And then I want to note that we have been working to advocate for this university, not just this semester, but throughout the fall. We met with a lot of our local government. We got to speak to several of our legislators and kind of really hit home with them before any of these budget conversations started happening, that these things matter, that you have to invest in people, because people will just leave. Youth aren't like adults that have families and spouses and homes and all this stuff that keeps them in one area. They can just leave. And so it's important to kind of create and foster that environment where they can thrive here. And we want that because we love our state and we want to feed into its future. So,
thank you, Jackson. So much of excuse me, what you were saying just feeds right into the alumni experience. What do alumni want? They want what students want. That is number one for alums. They want to know what is going to make a difference for students, and they are going to advocate for that. And it is so powerful because our alumni, 2/3 of our alumni live in Alaska, so they also want a strong Alaska. They want our students to be successful. They want them to stay in Alaska, which we know is proven to be, the data is, if you go to the university in Alaska, you're going to stay here. They want them to work for them. They want these students to be successful and then to be able to find a job and stay in Alaska. I remember being a young person in Alaska and getting my first mortgage and having my boss at the time working here at UF go, yay! And I was like, why are you so excited for my mortgage? Because you're gonna stay. So it's that bridge, right, between getting a job here or living here now as a student and then staying. That is viscerally important to us. The ASUAF has been such a great partner for the Alumni Association. We work together to create an advocacy program for all alumni that we focus on throughout the year. Our big deal is our trip to Juneau. That is coming up. And I want to thank Felicia Baroud, who is our point person here, for coordinating, organizing, getting us in front of every single legislator. And that's a big deal. That is valuable and important, but the work is all year long, as you said, Jackson. One thing that is really important too, I do want to mention, is this work we're doing is really about relationships. It's very important that we have priorities. We need to know where students' needs are. We need to know what's going to keep our university successful and forward-thinking and innovative. But it's the relationships that alums are really a key point in our business community, which so much of this is overlapping. Because going in and thanking a legislator for what they've already done is visceral. You can see it. When we come in, it's not adversarial. We're going in and saying thank you. And by the way, we're recognizing, I don't know, sometimes it's up to 2/3 of our legislators are alums themselves. So when we're recognizing them as fellow Alaskans and building that relationship and saying, we see you and we're here with you to make sure all of these things happen over the, over our future as Alaskans, that's really important and valuable. So it takes all of us. And I do want to say we've also partnered lately with our ASUAF president, inviting our ASUAF president to come with alumni for that portion, because students do their advocating as well. And that's been a real big game changer too. You can see it. The alums want to hear what students want, and so do the legislators. They want to hear what students want and need. So I think that kind of wraps up the main question.
Thank you. I just want to remind everyone of the URL code out there, and I've been watching for questions here from those colleagues online. I really hope that there are none yet, but I really would like to get some more questions, because this, again, is a presentation, but it's a give and take. Teresa, I'm happy that your colleagues were happy about your mortgage. The only person that was happy about my mortgage was Bart LeBon. So that's good.
Right.
An alum. That's right. Yeah, but he was really happy about it. He kept calling me and saying, refinance. No, I'm good, Bart. Thank you. Lisa, when you worked with Chamber on developing those priorities, how did that work? I mean, we have a system here. We bring forward our priorities to the president, to the system office, to the board. Things are approved, things are not approved, and there's motivation behind it. Like I said before, there's core, and then there are things that we think the state will invest in because it's in the state's best interest and it helps move our state forward. How did that work for Chamber? And then Chad, heads up, because I'm going to ask you about effective advocacy right after that.
Well, first I'm gonna I'm gonna go off script, Mike. I just want to say that our first action for the Fairbanks Chamber of Commerce is sending a letter to the legislators, urging them to repay back the $129.5 million. So I just inked our letter yesterday, and it's getting ready to go down next week. So that was our first legislative action item for 2026. So that's really great, and thanks, Chad, for getting me all the information for that. But yeah, to our process, probably very different than the university process. We are a very unique chamber in the state of Alaska in that we've got 5 advocacy committees that help kind of bring forward all of the issues from the different business industries, and then roll those up to the board of directors. So we have, I'll probably forget one now, but we've got transportation and infrastructure, workforce development, education, government relations, which also handles our economic development, military affairs. Tom, thank you so much for chairing our military affairs committee this year. And then, let's see, I'm missing one. Energy, environment, and natural resources. How could I forget that one? My day job. And so we've got all of these committees, and there's probably 100 volunteers that serve on those that are from the business community. We also have great participation from university on those committees as well. So they all kind of talk about what their priorities are, and then we kind of identify, and we have so much crossover between our different committees. So housing is something that's impacting the military. It's impacting our transportation folks. It's impacting workforce development, education. So some of those then naturally rise to the top for us as like, how much energy are we going to put behind some of these priorities? So I think in 2026, you're going to see housing, you're going to see affordable, reliable energy, because we can't obviously do anything without that. And then transportation, infrastructure, and then of course, education. And I think I can say up here, because I am not a UAF person, but we are advocating strongly that the president of the university system is residing here in Fairbanks. We are the flagship campus, and that'll be something that we definitely engage in and participate with the regents in the discussion when they look to hire Pat's replacement.
Thank you. I think that's absolutely important that the system president be here in Fairbanks for a number of reasons, and the system staff, the core system staff, be here in Fairbanks as well. A lot of the discussion points you just brought out in terms of the process, eerily familiar, because we too talked about energy, and I mean the topics are there. Chad, if you could just talk a little bit about effective advocacy. We're just a few folks, but we're talking to colleagues who will have an opportunity to either go to Juneau or speak to state legislators that are here in the interior. We'll run into them at airports. We know somebody who knows somebody. There's no degree of separation in our state. So what's effective advocacy for university staff, our faculty? How important is it for students to voice their opinions, those sorts of things?
Mike, thanks. I have a couple thoughts on that. The first one is, and this is something that a senator told me a long time ago when he reviews any sort of policy or budget item that comes before him, he said, Chad, what does this do to help all of Alaska? And you have to remember that we're coming from Fairbanks. If you want to advocate for UAF, you have to think about how this is helping the entire state. Because the reality is the Interior Delegation has 6 representatives in the House out of 40 and 3 senators out of 20 in the Senate. That's 15% of the legislature. And in order for you to be effective on advocating for UAF priorities, you have to get the support of Anchorage. You have to get the support of Southeast, Bethel, Nome. So that's something to consider for all of our advocates that are going down, is always ask yourself that question. You know, drones, for example. Drones has got a reach that goes out to Valdez, it's Palmer. It's areas that affect, it's the benefit of the entire state. So that's one thing that you can kind of think about whenever you're raising a voice in front of the legislature, and especially when you're talking with others that are in power positions that are from other regions of the state, which is currently the situation now. Anchorage and Southeast, for the most part, have a lot of the real power when it comes to the finance committees, and so that's just something to ponder as you go forward. One of the principles that I think about as far as all of our advocates come down to Juneau, and President Pitney told this to me a long time ago, is that, Chad, I don't want to have any bottlenecks, and we will always believe in freedom of speech and allowing people the constitutional right to talk to their legislator. I never want to be the reason why someone is discouraged from reaching out. The only real parameters we have at the state level, it's different from the federal level. Federal level, when you're doing lobbying and advocacy, there's paperwork you have to fill out. The state's a lot different. And my general thoughts are, think of the 2 words, perception and discretion, when you're reaching out. And really, the biggest rule that we have is that, you know, I don't recommend doing it from your EDU email, and just be very cognizant that unless there's an invitation or you're officially speaking on the behalf of the university, do not represent yourself that way. So from personal emails, it's fine. And just be very cognizant of that. Like I said, perception and discretion, and unless you have the authorized authority to speak on their behalf, which that does happen. There's no doubt that elements of that happens all across the system, and we have those very fruitful conversations. But those are just some things to think about. Otherwise, we have a broad belief in freedom of speech and raising your voice and exercising your constitutional right to talk to your legislator.
Thank you. I'm going to take a couple of questions here, and let's whoever wants to jump in answer them in no particular order. You showed what our funding priorities are, but what is at risk with the budget deficit? So what do we believe to be the big bogeys here in terms of this budget deficit, and if we don't get the budget that we've asked for? I have some answers, but I want others to weigh in, including Chamber, by the way.
Mike, I think the most important one from UAF's perspective to start out with is, I think, compensation. We need to make sure that that is funded to the highest extent possible. Like I outlined before, it's a tight budget scenario, and all the other departments are hungry too. They're going through the exact same process that we are. You know, Fish and Game, Department of Health. There's cutbacks that are happening in other departments. So compensation is the one that I think that we can definitely raise a voice. I think that we have allies in the legislature that I think it's worthy to have good discussions with Representative Galvin, Elise Galvin out of Anchorage. She's our subcommittee chair for the House. Senator Jesse Keel out of Juneau is our subcommittee chair out of the Senate. I think that having those conversations with those folks can go a long way. But that's the first item that I think of when it comes to advocacy.
Yeah, I guess I think research, because I feel like this is the research hub of the university, and there's been so much forward momentum. And so if you don't get that funding, and then everything kind of stops, but the industry, the business community is depending on the research that the university is doing. There's so much cross collaboration between there that, I looked at, I think it was like critical minerals, and then there was drone, and then there was, and so when you look at all of those, I think there was like 4 at the bottom there, but just the R1 alone, right? Like that has huge ramifications for the future of this university and for the future of the business community. So I kind of think research.
Can I just jump in and say, historically, what we've been trying to talk to the legislature individually and in general about is, it's about the future, right? And if we aren't willing today to pay what it actually costs, we're not setting up the future for success. So I think there's some, if you look historically at the amount that's in the governor's budget, that's not a cut from last year. Is that right, Chad? It's not a cut from last year. Yeah.
It's an increase, but it's below the Board of Regents request.
Exactly. So I'm not trying to say, yay, everything's rosy, but we can't stop at just not getting cut. That's what we're trying to say.
Yeah, I also go back, time just kind of like morphs together for me, but I just remember being downtown and we were doing the Save Our University campaign, right? How long ago was that? Maybe 4 or 5 years ago? I don't know, maybe longer than that. It's probably longer than that. But I just remember that, and like the morale that happens here at the campus when you go through these highs and their lows, and you never know what you're going to get for funding, and then people are trying to make decisions about their families and like kids and where they're going to go, and it just has a ripple effect through everything. And then students start looking and they're like, is this really the campus that I want to go to? Like athletics suffers, and then we fill the room here with folks that are coming out. It's like, don't kill the hockey program, and the business community is literally always going to be right there. We will always be in the first seat, I think, filling those and sharing our thought. And I do want to go back to kind of what Chad was saying about just advocating. The people that are wearing the suits and the Cuspics down in Anchorage, they're just like us. Like they literally are Alaskans that are there. And so, and they're all really relatively nice to talk to. And their staff, I don't want to underestimate like the power of their staff. They have incredible staff members that are doing a lot of the work and that are briefing the legislators. So never underestimate who you're talking to. So if a meeting gets canceled and you're planning on seeing Representative Stapp and it doesn't, and you're meeting with the staff, that's just as good as meeting with the representative.
Jackson, what's your thoughts on the budget potential deficit?
Yeah, I think one of the most concerning parts could be enrollment and retention. Those are number one priorities of the board, and our enrollment both in state and out of state, it's what brought me to Alaska. We are a great institution for keeping people in state, but also bringing new people here. So having that be any bit influenced would be like my greatest concern. But I also feel very hopeful. I know that regardless of what happens, that we will do well. We operate very lean already, and I've seen how we've been able to adapt and change to keep thriving and keep growing, independent of, funds that we're receiving from the government. But when it comes to everything here, yes, research is important. Yes, the academics are important, but really that student experience and making sure that is going well is important. So that would be one of my greatest.
Thank you. And I want to thank folks online or here for sending in now a swarm of questions. This is great. We will do the same thing because we're not going to get to all of these, but we'll try to maybe do it like lightning rounds maybe, but we will post these like we did in the first forum, and we will have answers to them with links to information. So if we don't get to them, so let me link a couple of these. I'm going to say this out loud, Chad, likely you, everybody try to weigh in here. This is an election year that includes a gubernatorial race, all House members, and half the state's Senate. How does that change or not change advocacy this year? Can you put into context what that might mean for the state budget and the university?
Well,
not to put you on the spot, but Chad.
I can say that generally in year 2 of a legislative session, and during a campaign year, there's a higher propensity for capital assets and sunlight for some sort of negotiations on capital requests. So because senators and representatives like to show that they're fighting for their district, and so when they have buildings in their district and there's assistance on that front, that can be a potential avenue. I think that with a campaign year, to also be cognizant for everybody, the PFD, as we all know, in almost every year, but particularly in campaign years, there's hesitancy to reduce it to a level that will make people more upset than some already are about what they consider to be a diminished PFD in light of the statutory formula that was effectively overturned back in 2018 with the Wielkowski versus state decision. So those are some of the dynamics to just think about going forward.
Thank you,
Can I
Teresa.
jump in?
And then
Yeah.
I'm going to have a follow-up for both Teresa and Jackson. Then I'm going to go to Lisa with a different question. But please go ahead. No, you go.
Jack.
You answer this.
Well, I just wanted to say it's a big deal, right? It's a big deal, election years, but also we're going through transition. So I just think more than ever, if you've ever thought about advocacy, if you've ever wondered, I would just encourage you to reach out. The alumni office, we're here to support you, to provide you resources, to help you through it, talk through it. But it's a big year. And I think to that point, you know, the university, it's important that we're going to have new leadership in the next year at the, you know, obviously university and statewide level, but we're here and we're still here and we're the connection. It's the business community, it's our alumni, it's us that will ride through those changes.
Okay. Jackson, let me ask you this. Funding the university is perceived oftentimes as just a cost rather than an investment with a return on that investment. What is the strategy to explain that to legislatures? I guess this is the value proposition, and the connection with the chamber. This individual says is great, but how do we say this is not a cost to the state? This is an investment, and here's what the investment brings to you.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think when legislators look at the budget, you know, they are looking at a lot of costs. You know, they're looking at budgets all day, like transportation, healthcare, all the various things that our state has to fund. And so it's very easy to also see education as a cost. But I think one thing that I'd want to highlight to legislators is, like I said earlier, is education's the only budget line that creates capacity for everything else. You know, when you fund a road, you're going to get a road. When you fund, say, a trooper, you're going to get safety in our state. But education, you know, is going to create things that make everything else work. Education essentially builds human capital, right? And that solves long-term problems. And so that is something that keeps on going. And I think it's also important just when talking about education as it's an investment, not a cost, is that, you know, just to talk about the various stories that come behind this institution. I think it's been very interesting. Student government has been working with alumni, and it is mind-boggling how many of the businesses in town are run by former graduates of UAF. It's incredible how many alumni of this university and how many people who are in student government now sit on the Alaska legislature. And it's incredible just, you know, how much we've had an influence on our state. And I think it's important to highlight that, you know, yes, we're giving an education and we're creating workers, but we're also creating these leaders that are leading us into the future.
Thanks. Chad, did you want to say something else?
Can I add just one thing for Jackson, and that was great. The word that the legislature uses a lot is just workforce. That's the most important thing the university provides to the entire state of Alaska. We're looked upon as far as that goes, so workforce is the key component.
And I don't know about you, but I'm really tired about like walking into restaurants and businesses downtown and it's like, we're short staffed. Like we need to like keep our people here. And that's what the university does. I mean, the enrollment here at UAF has really kind of like, rose the boat for the entire university system. I'm really proud that UAF has been able to do that. We want these people to stay here and we want there to be jobs in our community. And that's the pipeline I think that UAF helps fill.
And I was just going to say investment as well. I mean, we work with donors who are investing, and not all of them are even Alaskan donors. So I think you totally nailed all my answers, Jackson. It's exactly right, but it's the ROI is the alumni, the current students, the workforce, and the potential for investment.
Thank you. We have about 6 minutes left. There's a microphone over here. If anyone in the audience would like to ask a question, I think we have someone. No? Okay, if you do, Kara has the microphone. Or raise your hand and Kara will come over to you. Or I'll just read a question here. Bill, please. Dean Schnabel.
Thank you, Mike. I was curious because early in your talk, you said we'll talk about some effective ways to advocate and some ineffective ways to advocate. And I was really curious to hear what the ineffective ways to advocate are, because I've probably done many of those things.
I was going to say, Dean Schnabel, why are you looking at me? But
Well, the most ineffective way is to not do anything. So, I mean, if you just want to sit here and we could just talk amongst ourselves, so I think that's probably the most ineffective way. I feel like that's not what you're doing, though.
Chad?
That's a good answer. Can't beat it.
I think that there's a dozen approaches, but like Lisa said, when you look at who these legislators are, they are us. I mean, they really are, no matter where in the state. They're doing Carhartts and they want their four-wheeler to run and they're taking the kids to school and they're just trying to help. I believe that. So I think respective engagement and the value proposition. Why should they advocate and then resource an institution above some other things, knowing full well we're not going to get the full allocation, but the value proposition you've heard on the stage, and those two words I keep using often, I think is the key to this, a respectful engagement as to why the university should be invested in, because I honestly believe I don't know another engine in the state. We can have oil, a lot of oil at a high price, but unless you have the human capital, you have the institutions, you have the access, the roads, that's us, that's the people, and you do that through a university. The academy should be funded for because it's the academy. We should have that. We should also be funded for workforce and research and a certification so that mother, that single parent has one more class that they need to take to get certified so they can make $1 more an hour. It's everything from that very visceral local level all the way to PhDs in rocket ranges and Sokuliaks that are literally in Antarctica today. It's that kind of depth and breadth, that kind of communication I think is valuable. They expect it from me, they expect it from the suits, they expect it from the leadership. I think the most powerful advocacy comes from those who love the institution, who see the value institution, but perhaps are not of it. Those who are of it, our students, our alumni, our faculty, our staff, they have a very different story that I think is frankly more powerful than a story I could deliver to them because they expect me to deliver it to them. But you all have this connection with them because you are of a different place. And you can demonstrate the value that you bring to the institution, but more importantly, you can demonstrate the value you bring to the state. I think that's, at least in Mike's opinion, that is a very powerful message. If somebody does that to me, I'm going to listen a lot versus somebody who walks in the door and I know what they're going to say. I would like to hear from faculty, staff, our alumni. I want to hear that alumni story that I came here from California. I was a student athlete. I graduated. I've raised a family, and now I have a business in this town where not only am I making a living for my family, but I am now a vital pillar of this community, and I help employ 30, 50, 200 people. We have those stories. That's real. And to me, that's how you turn the dial in our state, in Fairbanks, and then how it connects to the rest of the world so I can communicate to students from the lower 48, you need to come to UA, UAF, and that story can be yours as well. Lisa?
Yeah, and I think that's why you see so many businesses participating in the education tax credit program, because there are so many businesses participating in that or endowing scholarships to the university. I mean, I don't think a business is going to make a bad, they're not going to invest money in a failing university system, right? Like, we are investing because this university is turning out wonderful students. I mean, my day job is working for East Valley Coal Mine. I didn't say that earlier, but thanks, Joe, for allowing me to be here as part of that. But, I think 80 or 90% of our engineering department are UAF graduates from the College of Engineering and Mines. And we've participated in the Education Tax Credit Program for years and years. And we're not alone in that. Associated General Contractors has an entire scholarship program that they saw a need that the contracting industry needed. And so they stepped up to the plate. And businesses are continuously doing that. We do that all the time. And I think that's because the university has been such a wonderful partner to business.
Thank you. We've run out of time, but there's a lot of questions here, but I want to answer one more, and then I'll do a wrap and ask if you have any last comments. And this one is, beside the tuition raise, how is the university finding ways to fund themselves without federal funding? We are not. I mean, federal funding is, as I said, a huge part of our engine. We've worked very hard to build that over 100 years. I hope that we can do even more in that area. It is one of the three big buckets: the federal funding, the state funding, and then tuition. And so it's not just only on tuition, but boy, is tuition key. You've heard this. As federal and state budgets are, go like this, our enrollment is substantively important to us. And so a vibrant enrollment brings us not only students, it brings the tuition that allows us to hire the faculty, that allows us to offer the degree programs. So those three pillars have to be as solid as we possibly can be. We can't survive without those federal dollars. And I'm not just talking about earmarks. I'm talking about our research faculty that punch way above their weight. $250 million comes through this institution. It is a huge part of us. So I would actually advocate for more federal dollars, and I am. That's why I started with the good news. The good news is that pillar, at least for this fiscal year, is looking pretty good, as opposed to when we started a discussion last semester, it wasn't looking pretty good. The second is the state. We have a reality here we've all talked through. You understand a little bit better how that fits in, the dynamics of everything from an election year to the price of oil to the pressures on our legislature. That's just a reality. And that's why we've spent a lot of time on enrollment, not just bringing new students, new enrollment, but retaining the students that we have and trying to find ways to help them through graduation or whatever their academic goals are. Those are three big pillars. I don't know a university that, like us, that doesn't have the different pillars. You have to have diversified funding. Any last comments from the panel?
Performance scholarships.
Performance scholarships.
Yeah.
Okay.
HEIF, right? What do they call it? HIFE?
The HIFE.
In Juneau? Yeah.
The Higher Education Investment Fund.
Support that so we can have tuition being paid to university. Yeah.
Jen?
And that's about future workforce.
Jackson, anything else?
Yeah, scholarships are just a huge value proposition. You know, they give us a great way to kind of advertise our university. It's one of the reasons that I came up here. So that is a big thing to focus on.
I would just say, do the advocacy. That's the first step, and we can help you be more connected and dig down deeper into your story, because I do think that matters. You know, if you can say it's not just about me and what I think, it's about what I represent, it's about what I see happening in all the ways that lack of funding is going to be a barrier.
So going forward, the Chamber, our Fairbanks community, and the university will be together, advocating for each other, because if we do that, we're advocating for us collectively. I do want to say that we have great support from the system, right? President Pitney and that leadership, support from our interior legislators, but I will be down in Juneau advocating for this institution, for UA, and surprisingly enough, for UAA and UAS. We three chancellors simply believe that we together have to advocate for us individually, together, and for UA. If UAA and UAS are strong, UAF's going to be strong. If the other two, it just works together, and that's just the world in which we live in, and that's an okay thing. We actually are stronger together. We enjoy a great relationship between the three, and if you add President Pitney in the system office, we really do have an engaged, coordinated, and comprehensive partnership that I'm not sure these moons have aligned like this before, quite not like this. So I'm looking forward to going to Juneau, to advocating with colleagues and friends. I ask you too to help me in that endeavor, just like we did on the federal side, help us on the state side, because the bottom line is we're all trying to funnel the resources here to fulfill the mission, but also to ensure that our students have access to the education they want, to go from dreams to goals. But I also want our faculty to have the resources, because we're asking them to do a lot. I want our staff to have the resources they need, because we ask them to do a lot, and we need the infrastructure so that we can carry out our mission. So thank you all for spending an hour with us. The questions that we did not get to, even the ones we did, we'll post online and then we'll have responses for hopefully in a few days. Thank you for spending the hour.